All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this great series of presentations for the symposium. Again, my name is Claudia Pineda Tibbs. My pronouns are they, them, and I serve on the board of advisors for Latino Outdoors. So before kicking things off, I just want to acknowledge the land that I am inhabiting, the ancestral land of the Ohlone, Costanoan, Estelan Nation, as well as acknowledge the Indigenous people and the distinct communities who preserved and occupied the land that I get to call home. So a little bit about our wonderful organization, Latino Outdoors. Our mission is to inspire, connect, and engage Latino communities in the outdoors and embrace cultura y familia, culture and family, as part of the outdoor narrative, ensuring our history, heritage, and leadership are valued and represented. So Latino Outdoors is a unique Latinx-led organization working to create a national community of leaders in conservation and outdoor education. As part of this work, we're focused on expanding and amplifying the Latinx experience in the outdoors, also providing leadership opportunities, mentorship opportunities, and professional opportunities, while serving as a platform for sharing cultural connections and narratives that are often overlooked by the traditional outdoor movement. And it's a space for the community to be present, to share our voices, and to showcase how conservation's roots have been ingrained in our cultura for generations. So been using the word culture a lot, or cultura. And so the way that I see culture is really based off of shared norms, beliefs, behaviors that connect a group from past to present to future generations. And I would say for us in this space right now, our love for nature and the outdoors and to protect it have created that culture of caring for the environment. And I would say that that's similar for Latino Outdoors as well. And so this theme of culture and people, you'll start to see in our theory of change. So what you'll notice here in our theory of change is that people are really at the center of it. Latino Outdoors offers free outdoor activities and supports people who are receiving their introduction to nature, right? Their first experience in the outdoors. And we do that by creating a welcoming and family-friendly environment. We weave aspects of culture, cultura, community, wellness, and connection into all of our outdoor outings. So you'll see that the interactions that people have with each other in the outdoors is really building that community. And that's very different from what you might see in traditional outdoor marketing campaigns, advertisements. It's usually the one lone hiker summiting this, mountain, and that's not what we're about. And I think that for some people who have not had that opportunity to connect with the outdoors, it might create a mental model that the outdoors isn't for me, or the outdoors isn't a safe place. The outdoors isn't a place where I can be in community. And so that's where we're trying to shift that narrative. People to place, connecting people to place and what they are experiencing, that sense of place, whether it's visiting a local preserve, a local state park, is part of that exploration process, and really understanding that we are more than just the place where I reside, right? Like my house or my urban community, but I am also a part of nature. And people to process, connecting people to the process of going outdoors safely and enjoying it and having an enjoyable experience. And that's really the self-empowerment piece, where people start to shift that mental model of who is allowed to be in the outdoors, who can consider themselves a hiker, a kayaker, and such. So really having that self-empowerment to go out there and enjoy recreation. And then people to policy. That's really the culmination of the Latino Outdoors theory of change, ensuring that people are able to take action towards the issues that affect the outdoors. So policy is very much a opportunity for the folks within Latino Outdoors, whether it is our community of volunteers who put on these programs, or whether it's the people that come to our programs, are able to see themselves as advocates for change. And one of our intentional outcomes with Latino Outdoors is to provide the Latinx community with opportunities to see themselves represented in conservation constituency. A lot of the conversations that I'm seeing today are very focused on conservation and providing Latinx communities with increased opportunities to access public lands or other open spaces, outdoor activities, as well as just seeing themselves better represented in these areas will shift the demographics of the conservation constituency so that they're better reflected of our countries. So that's something that's really important, considering, you know, there's a lot of policy power within the Latino community, the Latinx community. They're a big demographic when it comes to the voting population. And if we want to preserve these spaces, it makes a lot of sense to engage the Latino community, the Latinx community. And so with that, I do want to share our vision of decolonizing nature. And so when I use that term decolonization, what I'm really talking about is moving away from the dominant culture's vision of what it is to be out in nature and who can be in nature, all of the things that I've mentioned already, and really getting back to the roots of it. And so for us, that really means that there's an opportunity for economic equity, community wellness, right? So those are things that we don't always talk about in the outdoor field, social and environmental justice, as well as that diverse conservation constituency. Those are all really important to have a more sustaining opportunity for having more folks be introduced to nature and the outdoors, for more visitation to occur, for people to feel comfortable, and for people to take action to want to protect those natural spaces. And a lot of that begins with just access, removing those barriers, whether they are real or perceived. They're there. And this is really a ground up approach to outdoor equity. And a lot of it does start with fostering that sense of place, right? So if somebody hears about, let's say, like a nature preserve, they might not be willing to go to it yet because it might be far away, or like one of my local nature preserves is in a really weird place. It's wonderful, but every time I go there, I always feel like I'm following the wrong instructions because I'm going through agricultural field and it feels like I should not be there. But there's no signage, right? So if I have not had an experience there before, then I might think I'm trespassing. And if I'm not somebody who has citizenship or who has a fear of being put in a position where law enforcement might come and approach me, that's really scary. So it's really about putting those, or like thinking, I mean, more about those barriers that might prohibit somebody from participating in an outdoor experience, especially in those more remote locations. As well as activation, that's also very important to our process in ensuring that participants have an opportunity to activate their love of nature, whether it's going on a hike, whether it's tide pooling, whether it is birding or looking at native plants, and also thinking about what those cultural connections are, if there are any, you know, having conversations about culturally how plants have been used in our way of community wellness. That's a really great opportunity to activate somebody's cultural perception of what we get from nature and the idea of wanting to engage more with nature in a way that puts somebody in that space. And then movement building, again, tapping into the desire to give back, whether it's supporting policies or signing petitions, but developing an outdoor leadership network is really important for this work, and to develop those skills that will allow the Latinx community to almost create these new threads of conservation culture based off of what has existed already, where we haven't seen ourselves represented. And that is something that I want to tie to all of the things that Latino Outdoors does that is really wonderful, is something that I want to tie back to, especially for those of you who are working with the public, and that's environmental identity. So environmental identity is an identity that is positively associated with pro-environmental behavior. It's a sense of self as part of and connected with nature. And psychology research finds that one of the factors influencing environmental behavior is identity. So some identities are more likely to motivate pro-environmental behaviors than others, but the role that environmental identity has within all of this, I think, is something that's fascinating for all of us to consider, because there are multiple connected factors such as practice and opportunities and experiences and social interactions and recognition that allow somebody to develop their own environmental identity. So drawing on the theoretical frame of identity research from science education, Sarah Stapleton considers the importance of social interactions in arguing that identity development is connected to practice and to action and to recognition. So the more that you do something, the more you start to see yourself and embody that identity, right? Like when I was first starting out as a birder, I didn't consider myself a birder. I would just say, like, I like to look at birds, but having that birder identity, especially in my local community where the majority of the birders in my community are old and white and affluent, I did not feel like that was an identity that I could embody. And so being able to go continuously and practice those skills, those ID skills, the opportunity to have experiences with people that look like me as we're birding, having that be a social interaction is what really allowed me to develop that identity as a birder, and to be able to have that recognition as well by others, how others start to see me when I have my binoculars, when I have my Sibley, and things of that nature. So in other words, one becomes a particular type of person through practice and expresses themselves as a particular type of person in relation to others through those actions. And that's recognized by others as a particular type of person, right? So I am a birder. I have gone on these experiences. I've done it multiple times. I've done it in different locations. I am a birder. I am a hiker. I am a kayaker. I am an environmentalist, right? So all of that is really important to consider. And especially when we think about how to build this culture, right? So you're hearing about this organization, they're doing a lot of really great things, but how do you give your organization an example to help build that conservation culture, or just culture for somebody to feel like they belong? So culture is like a tree, and a tree is part of a bigger ecosystem that shapes and impacts its growth and development. So shallow culture that you see on this left-hand side, that's represented in the trunk and the branches of the tree. And we can think of surface culture as the observable fruit that's at the top, the fruit that the tree bears. And the surface and shallow culture, they're not static. They change, they shift over time as social groups move around. You know, it just continues to move, right? It's not static. And a cultural mosaic of the branches and the fruit on a tree change in response to the seasons and its environment. So again, it's constantly changing. That's what you can do. you can do that. You can have people have those observable patterns. You can engage somebody in surface culture by having information that's accessible in different languages, in common language, for example. If you are in a certain community and our community cares a lot about the children in our community because they are going to grow up to be the next generation of environmental stewards. You know, if that's part of your vision, then that's the vision that you can use to engage family members or multi-generational families. And this example of the shallow culture, that's more of that high emotional impact on trust. That's the nature of relationship. That's building relationship with the people that come to your spaces and creating that welcoming environment, creating the opportunity to ask folks where they're visiting from. Have you been here before? I'm here if you have any questions. I hope to see you next time. Like, I want to see you next time. I am building a relationship with you. But really where there is a lot of change that happens is at the deep culture. And that deep culture is like the root system of a tree. It's what grounds the individual and nourishes their mental health. And if we want to help somebody develop that deep culture of environmentalism, of acceptance, there needs to be beliefs and norms as part of that, and the concepts of self. Well, I don't know if I want to, if I really see myself going to that place because I don't know anybody who's gone there. And that's where Latino Outdoors, for example, creates that self or that concept of self that we can go together. For you all, it might be having an opportunity to change some of your marketing material so that it looks, so that it is reflective of the people that are visiting your locations, if it truly is a diverse area. And if it's not diverse, but you want to have folks who are more diverse come, then, you know, I think it's also an opportunity to really think about the relationship that that local community may or may not have with nature. It's going to maybe some of the local schools and finding out, have you heard of this place? You can bring your families here. Connecting at community events and letting people know that I am a part of the community as well. My organization, my you know, environmental reserve, ecological reserve is part of this community. I am a part of your community. So building that relationship to nature and having people get to that is something that I think you can help facilitate so that somebody can really develop that sense of place. And in some cases, this notion of fairness does come into play. And I think that's really where we're centering on equity and, again, those perceived barriers and who gets to go to these places. And it's not that somebody gets to and somebody doesn't get to, but for some people, they might feel as though they are not being welcomed, or there are too many barriers set in place for me to go there. So it's not fair. And again, by our organizations going out into the community and saying, hey, we're here, we want you to come. I'll answer all of the questions you have. What bus route do you take? Or what's the way you get there? You know, bring it up on Google Maps and show people the location. I think that's really how you get at developing that deep culture that, again, all of us in this space right now, we are here based off of our common culture of caring for the environment. And so getting our visitors to feel that as well really has to manifest itself from that surface to shallow culture to deep culture. So that was a lot. And hopefully you will continue to have this conversation with us at Latino Outdoors by visiting our website, by following us on social media, because the outdoors is a place that a lot of us get healing from and where we build community. And so what I want to share with this URL, if you have time, You can open up your phone app on your camera app on your phone, and the QR reader should pop up. But this is something that we're really focusing on this year during our giving campaign, which is called Sana Sana Outdoors. And in the Latinx culture, Sana Sana is something that a parent or a loved one would say to somebody who is hurt. Like, it's kind of weird, but you would say something like sana sana colita de rana, which really pretty much means like heel frog tail. It's really weird. But we're focusing this year a lot on healing that the outdoors provides us with. And these last 2 years in particular have made it clear that whether it's a moment of calm, watching the sunset, the shared laughter of tipping over a kayak on flat water, or the joy of seeing your favorite migratory bird return after a long winter south, we feel better when we're outdoors. And sometimes we find that this healing in solitude, there's healing in solitude, and sometimes there's healing when we come together as friends and familia in nature. But unfortunately, not everyone gets to experience the healing time of the outdoors. Only 1 in 3 Latinx people live within walking distance. Then we consider that a mile, walking distance of a park. And although 278 million people visit national parks every year, only 9% of those visitors are Latinx. So everybody deserves time outside, and everyone deserves to benefit from the healing found in nature. And I truly believe that all of the work that you're doing will help people have that healing time in the outdoors. And just lastly, I want to leave you with this little quote that some folks from Latino Outdoors shared during one of our campaigns, and that's all lands, big or small, local parks, national parks for all. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Does anyone have any questions?
There is a lot of great support for Claudia's work and her talk. Says, Claudia, you've really given us stuff to improve on. Thank you so much, Claudia. That was a wonderful overview of how we can build community. Amazing presentation. So important to make those connections and foster community in the outdoors, especially as it relates to reducing wildlife disturbance. Thank you, Claudia. That was great. Such a good presentation, informative and thorough.